Well, hello again. This is Tony Coe, and you're listening to Refinement, Not Retirement, the podcast that's dedicated to our idea that refining your life is preferable to retiring from it. So kind of think of our show as therapy for retirees. And when I say therapy, it's as much therapy for us as it is for anyone else, because we're new to this retirement thing. You know, we gave up our job, our work, our company a few months ago, and we're sort of getting used to this new life, and there are challenges and there are great things about it, and you're joining us on our journey. So when I talk about us, who am I talking about? Well, my co-host on this show is my wife, Christine, who joins me today from our kitchen. Hello, Christine.
Hello.
So
very hot.
It's very, very hot. It's very odd that we're talking about this subject today, which I'm going to come to in a moment, but on such a hot day in such a hot week. But it is lovely to be in the Cotswolds, lovely to be in the beautiful village of Elmley Castle, in our wonderful new house. But we've been sort of missing in action for a bit, haven't we? We went to Crete, and we did our episode on that, which you should check out if you haven't already listened to that, because we talk about all sorts of things, including the leper colony there, which is fascinating. Since then, we've actually been a little closer to our shores. We visited the Isle of Wight for pickleball, which has recently been introduced onto the island and is growing fast. So we're back now and ready to ready with our new topic today. Our new episode today, which is about, and don't go to sleep when I tell you what it's about, because it won't sound immediately fascinating, but it's going to be about air source heat pumps, about which there has been a great deal of controversy. A lot of the sort of right-wing press has kind of taken against air source pumps, calling them useless, and a bit like electric cars. You know, you either love them or you hate them, sort of thing. So we thought that we'd share with you our direct experience of having and living with an air source heat pump, because let's face it, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So was it a refinement to our lives? If it was an accidental one, because we weren't planning on getting a home with an air source heat pump.
I don't think we even considered it, did we?
Never even considered it. I had absolutely no experience, even though I've been in property all my working life, never even heard of them, but I knew nothing about them. So it was accidental that we got one. And if it was a refinement, and you'll hear more about that, then it was an accidental one. A bit like when we got rid of our narrowboat, Tickety Boo. We thought getting the narrowboat was a refinement. Actually, getting rid of it was the refinement.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to those episodes about our narrowboat experience, please do check them out. So, rewinding. COVID hit. We were living in central London, in South Kensington. COVID hit, and we decided that was the time, that was the push that we needed in order to do what we planned to do one day, which was to move out to the countryside. Now, we're not going to go into that in a great deal of detail, because we have an episode on that. I think it might have been our second episode about escaping to the country. Do check it out if you haven't listened to that. So it's all in there. You know, that particular story is there. But we found our perfect house in Elmley Castle on the northwest tip of the Cotswolds. And that perfect house was perfect in every respect, bar one thing. And Christine's going to perhaps tell you a little bit about that.
What was it? What are you saying? Are you talking about the air source pump?
Oh, yes, because if you remember, we liked everything about it. And what did I say to you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, I don't think we knew much about it. You did start to research it when we saw the house, when we got home, having loved it, and you started to freak out because you thought that it was not very efficient, or you're pulling cold air out, you're pulling the cold air outside, aren't you? And then pushing it from the outdoor in. And you sort of said, well, are you sure you want this house? Because we're not going to be able to afford the heating bill, because it's going to probably be very expensive, and we're going to have to wrap up warmly in lots of sweaters and jumpers, because it was underfloor heating, right? And radiators upstairs, but they're very different, which I'm sure you can explain that.
Put in its simplest terms, we found the perfect house. We wanted a contemporary house. We wanted to be in a nice medieval kind of village with looking at nice, beautiful thatched cottages. We didn't really want to live in one of those. We wanted to live in a modern house. We wanted bifold doors and, all that good stuff. And we found all that in the house that we chose, but it had this newfangled heating system about which we had knew nothing
You
about.
have to put them in new houses though now. Do they do you have to put them in new houses?
No, the government tried to set a date for that, but I think that it's like with electric cars, really, it's impractical.
Yes, but in a way, I mean, thank goodness that they did, because it actually, well, we can go on to talk about that, but not having any clue, but now in hindsight, it's fantastic, right?
Well,
we didn't know that.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It may or may not be fantastic. We're not quite there yet, in our story, anyway. But
no, but I
know. I was very, very concerned because I didn't have any experience of it, and I was always taught in the property industry, stick to the tried and tested. People always, for instance, roofs. People have always tried to do new types of roof, and I remember the Turnerizing system where you stick tar on a flat roof and all that sort of thing. And all my training and all my learning told me that you want to stick to the tried and tested, and gas boilers and oil-fired boilers they've stood the test of time. They're tried and tested, and here was this new thing, which is a little bit like an air conditioning sort of, you have this outside unit, and it takes the ambient air, the warmth that's already in the air, and sort of through like a reverse refrigerator process, as I understand it. As you can tell, I'm not a techie person, I'm not an engineer, but it uses that heat in order to save energy, and sort of warms it up, if you like. So that told me that it wasn't going to be like a boiler that gives you enormous bursts of energy. It was going to give you a little bit of incremental heat that's natural, and then it was going to warm that up. So I thought, and I read about it and researched it, really couldn't, even through all my property contacts, really couldn't find anyone who had direct experience of it. And
except one person.
Well, yeah, that's true, but that was right at sort of the end when I was sort of making my final conclusions. But I hadn't really found anyone who had direct experience. And I know you're talking about brother-in-law Paul, who was very, very helpful, but he didn't really have a lot of direct experience of it, other than he thought it was a good idea. I think he'd put them into some of the homes that he built, but that's not the same.
He did ground source pumps, actually.
Did he? That's not, well, there you are. That's different from air source heat pumps.
Yeah.
So I was concerned because the feedback I was getting suggested, well, first of all, they're not tried and tested. Secondly, they don't really produce enormous bursts of heat like a oil or gas fired boiler. So my feeling was this was going to be something where you're going to have to wear more clothes, right? So I had that conversation with you. What did I say to you?
You just said, do you still want to go ahead with this house, because you are going to not be so warm as we're used to?
Well, actually, what I said to you was, be prepared to wear jumpers in the house.
Yeah.
Be prepared to wear layers of clothing, because you're going to have to keep warm a little bit more like the way they did in the olden days, right? Because I was concerned that we weren't going to be able to do what we've been doing for decades, which was just switch up the boiler and the thermostat, and you'd get heat quite quickly.
Boost up the radiators. Yeah.
You said, well, I love the house enough that I'm willing to take that risk, and I did have that conversation with Paul, my brother-in-law, Paul, and he seemed to think that it was a safe thing to go for. And
but it wasn't just me having to wear jumpers; it was also you too. You're talking as if it's like it's just me prepared to wear.
Well,
jumpers.
no, but there's always a battle
involved.
between husband and wife over the thermostat, isn't there? And you always like it a lot warmer than I did. So I think, I wasn't worried too much about myself in that respect, but I was concerned about you because you do like your heat. As it happened, perhaps I didn't need to be so concerned, because the issue that we had with it when we did go, we obviously went ahead, bought the house, and accepted the situation. We were told by our neighbours who have very simple the one on one side, it's an identical house. On the other side, it's a bigger house, all built by the same bespoke builder, and they both kind of said, well, this was absolutely new to us. They'd been here a couple of years before us. It's new to us, and we had to learn a great deal about it, but it seems to work. The best thing to do is to sort of just trust it and leave it alone. So, which is pretty much what we've done. But we did have an issue, and it was soon after moving in, we did have an issue. So before I get to that, one thing we did do is we bought the best possible maintenance cover that we could find. The system that we have in our house is a Mitsubishi system, and it's called Ecodan, ECODAN. And so we adopted what the previous owners took out. I think they had it, but we went for the highest. I think they call it their diamond cover.
No, we didn't, because if you remember, it was covered the first 3 years. So when we arrived, we were at 2.5 years. So we got told about it from the neighbours. So when the warranty was up, the 3 years cover, we then had to look for something, and Dave and Sally recommended the diamond, or whatever it's called, service,
Black Diamond or something like that. It's Mitsubishi's. It's Mitsubishi's top
rate.
Thing,
so we signed up for that.
Which they described as completely comprehensive. No worries. You needn't have any concerns, and that felt like it felt like the sort of thing that you got from British Gas for a gas boiler, where you go for their 5-star cover. Everything was covered. Wasn't cheap, but I felt that we needed that. So we did have an issue, and it was the issue that we had very soon after we moved in. Well, when the winter came anyway, because when we moved in the summer. But when the winter season came around, I think sort of October time, we did have an issue, but it was the opposite that I was expecting. The opposite, because I came down to the kitchen in the morning, big kitchen breakfast room, lovely room. It's probably our favorite room in the house. Came down to that, and I saw that the temperature was going up and up and up and up and up, and it was becoming sweltering. So naturally, called them, and we'll be out there. And then the next thing we knew, we had a sort of call from them saying, well, no, this is to do with your underfloor heating, because the ground floor is all underfloor heating, and since it's to do with your underfloor heating, we don't cover that. I thought, what are you talking about? You described your cover as completely comprehensive and so on and so forth.
And that's when we freaked out, didn't we? We thought, oh no, what have we done? What have we done? We were right. We were right to be worried, but on the opposite effect.
Right. So without sort of going into a huge amount of detail about it, it was resolved. We did have a fight over it, and I got a little bit legal with them. And to be fair to them, they did the right thing. and they put it, they put everything right, and it's since then it's worked fantastically. And it is, you can just leave it alone. You don't have to really move the thermostats. You just leave them at a comfortable temperature. But what I would say is very, very critical. So there has been a lot of criticism in the press, and even talk of people, putting them in costing 10, 20, 30, 40 grand, because they're not cheap to put in. People have put them in and now ripping them out, apparently. Because they're not producing the heat. Well, I think I know the reason for that. And what we should say is that our house and the houses on the same development, 3 houses in total, the houses are very, very well thermally insulated. I mean, unbelievable, really. I mean, they're so well insulated. Everything fits, the doors, the windows, everything's high quality. And
you can't even hear a car when the windows are shut. You can't even hear a car pull up, can you? You can't hear anything from the outside. We're in a very quiet lane, but you can't hear a thing.
Yeah, it's just so well insulated, and that is, I think, the key to whether your air source heat pump, or indeed your ground source heat pump, whether it's going to work for you. And that means, I think, that you need a new build that is built for it. These houses were built for the system. If you're retrofitting, and we have in the family that situation to an old cottage, a leaky old cottage with condensation problems and lots of leaking, that this thing is going to be running a lot, this air source pump, and it really is designed to run as little as possible, and just to provide the help that's needed to keep the temperature of the house up. But then once it's done that job, it's like an aeroplane cruising at 50,000, 30,000 feet or whatever. There isn't a lot of energy required once it's up there. And in fact, I was told by the engineers when they came that you really don't want to be fiddling with those. Don't reduce those dials too much, because not about 2%, 2 degrees. Sorry, not 2%. 2 degrees is about the limit you want to do, because you don't want it doing a lot of work getting the heat up again. And I have found that to be absolutely true. And the situations that I have heard about and have direct experience of, where people have retrofitted and tried to make it work, have not been great, because they're trying, you really, in those situations with a leaky home, you need those bursts of energy that only gas and oil fired boilers can provide.
Yeah, because we have the radiators upstairs, but again, they're not like radiators that we're used to, where the water gets hot when you put the gas boiler powers up, and then you get a hot radiator. These radiators in the bedrooms never get hot, do they? And yet, going back to you don't have that sort of temperature. The bedrooms never feel cold, do they? Ever?
No. I'm so glad that you mentioned this, because we don't script this show, and it's sort of very much a conversation. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you've reminded me of a very, very key factor, and that is that really the engine of this heating system is the underfloor, the ground floor, underfloor heating. We have largely a stone underfloor, of ground floor, limestone it is. And there are coils. You think of it like radiators in the floor, water flows through them, which is heated by the air source heat.
And you feel the patches, don't you, of the warmth?
You feel the warmth very much. But the thing is that the warmth stays in the stone. So once it's done, it's run for a little while, it's produced the heat. That heat is residing in that stone floor, and that stone floor continues to give off that heat for hours afterwards, and that heat rises, and that rises up to the upper floor and up the staircase well, right? So there are radiators upstairs, but as Christine says, you hardly ever notice them getting even warm.
No, they
You
don't.
do sometimes when it's cold and they come on. And I have heard, that a lot of people are only putting in the ground floor system because that heats the upstairs. You don't really need the radiators. And I think that's probably the case here.
Yeah, I think so
Largely.
too.
So don't think that you can, again, this is a matter of retrofitting. I mean, don't think that you can just use radiators. Companies will tell you, oh, fine, just use radiators and we'll stick a air source pump on it. Well, I don't believe that. I think you need that engine. You need that latent heat. It's a bit like storage heaters, isn't it? The old-fashioned electric storage heaters.
Yeah.
They had bricks in them, didn't they? Breeze blocks in them. And they would come on at night when the electricity was cheapest. And then they would release that heat throughout the day afterwards. It's the same idea. And I think that that's very, very important. So talking about that, one of the first things that we did when we came into this house is we changed to Octopus Energy, who I think are brilliant. Octopus Energy was far cheaper at the time than, I forget who the people, I think they might have been using British Gas for their electricity, actually, the people who were here before us.
I think it was actually, yes.
We saved a lot of money. We told our next door neighbors about it, who have the identical house, and they also said, wow, we're saving a lot of money by going with Octopus. Of course, everything has changed in the energy market since then. But, Octopus not only had two attractive aspects to it. One was the cost, the main one. Second thing, they only use green electricity. So produced from solar, wind, hydro. So that was obviously attractive because we like to be as green as we possibly can. So we did that, and I think that both us and our neighbors saved a lot of money on our energy by going to Octopus. And then, of course, we did something else, didn't we, Chris? We installed solar panels, 24 solar panels on our roof, and we installed
12 at the front and 12 in the back.
Correct. And we installed a Tesla Powerwall, a battery in the garage to go with that, which meant that we could store energy. So at that time, we were on an Octopus tariff, which did very cheap. I think it was 5p per kilowatt hour overnight. And we would charge our battery overnight when we had the cheap rate and then use the electricity from the battery during the day. Of course, the solar was also producing power, and we were selling that back to the grid, as well as putting it in our battery. And, we have had, since being here, always 2 electric cars and a hot tub. And even then, as a result of putting that solar array and battery in, our costs, I think, were around half our next door neighbors with the identical house. So that was, that was incredibly good. Of course, since then, as I've said, all bets are off as far as the energy is concerned. But we're still far cheaper because we now have a couple of Tesla cars, and as well as the Powerwall, and we qualify for the Tesla Energy Plan, which is just an asymmetrical tariff, which means that you pay the same rate for your electricity as you sell it at, symmetrical. So, and I think that at the moment is 25p per kilowatt hour.
Yeah, hopefully, I think it is.
Hopefully all that's going to come down. So, overall, it's worked out really, really well for us. And I would put it in the category, having an air source heat pump, of a life refinement. So that was
I think that's true.
The
one of our good along with the house.
Well, of course, we absolutely love the house, always have loved the house. We would love it if it was a gas-fired boiler, I'm quite sure. But this is, this obviously it's great to be using green energy, be as green as we possibly can. I think we're doing well in that respect. Everyone can do better, of course. We can certainly do better, but I think it's I think it's been really, really good. But as far as others are concerned, listening to this, you've got to be very careful. You've got to make sure that the property is suitable, very well insulated. You know, I would definitely urge that. Chris, do you have anything to add before I close out this?
No, I don't think
this
so.
episode?
I think we've covered it all.
Great. That's good. We're going to say something else. It sounded as though you were on.
No, I was about to say,
tongue.
but we have gorgeous sunshine at the moment, so it's very hot and lovely. But actually, again, going hot, warm in the winter, but actually with all the bifold doors open, the windows open, it's actually also a very cool house. So it's actually very pleasant.
Well, yeah. I mean, the insulation works both ways, doesn't it? Insulates
it does,
against the heat as well. And of course, those limestone floors, you know, make it cool, don't they? And, you know, help to make it cool. It never really feels inside the house. It never really feels sweltering at all. It certainly did in our leaky house or our leaky property in Kensington. It got very, very, very hot. In fact, we had some air conditioning in there, which we badly needed, really. And of course, being in the city, it's always hotter, isn't it?
And very old, very thick walls, wasn't it? Old.
So property. I think there are some grants available for air source heat pumps.
Are there?
Yeah. So I don't know how difficult it is to get them. We didn't need to or we wouldn't have qualified, obviously, because we already had one, because in the house that we bought, it was already there. So, and we couldn't access grants for our solar. It was just too, I don't know whether we didn't qualify or whether it was just too difficult.
I think they've stopped doing them, haven't they, for solar panels?
They may well have done. You're ahead of me on that. But you know, as usual, the government does it. I won't say the government. All governments do everything like this badly. They couldn't have, you know, they just can't organize things and do things efficiently. And what they're doing here with air source heat pumps is very similar to what they're doing with electric cars. And we will be doing an episode on electric cars. So watch out for that. We'll again be telling you our what our lived experience has been. We've had them for, you know, very many years. And we'll be telling you what our lived experience is. But I won't spoil the episode because I've got some things to say about that, which will not be entirely positive. So look out for that episode. You know, again, what the government's got done there with electric cars, you know, they just haven't really helped the transition process yet. They're requiring people to really to change to electric motoring.
You're not supposed to be talking about it now, Tony.
No, I should stop. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up now. And we're a young podcast. We're growing our audience. We thank you for your support, dear listener. Please like, share this episode and others. Please check out the previous episodes. There's lots of things, lots of refinements, life refinements that we will be talking about. And we like to hear your feedback. It's very helpful to us. We like to know what subjects you like, what you don't perhaps want us to talk about anymore, what things that you would like us to talk about. Please engage, participate. We love your ideas. We love your feedback. And you can do that feedback on our Facebook page, or you can do it via our YouTube channel. You can do it via, we use Spotify for podcasters, which we think is brilliant. You can engage with us by any of those channels, and we will certainly read everything, and we will respond. And we're always looking for ideas and indeed interesting guests to join us on the show. So anyway, for now, as always, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Sunny day.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.